All right, can anyone hear me in the room? All right, so we're starting the meeting. So if everybody could quiet down, please. So we're calling the meeting to order at 6:05. The first item, it's going to be the election of the chair and the vice chair. Do I have a motion to elect a chair?
Yes. I would like to make a motion to elect a chair.
Who would you like to take the chair spot?
I'd like to elect you.
Okay. So motion made to elect Jonathan Langley for the chair spot. Is there a second?
There is a second.
Okay, second, so first by Joel, second by
Jeff?
Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, we have a chair. So moving next to the vice chair, is there a motion to appoint a vice chair for current year?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to appoint a vice chair of Frank.
Okay, motion made to appoint Frank Jones as vice chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing no one opposed, we have a chair and a vice chair. So next item is going to be the approval of the minutes from the November 4th, 2021 BZA meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of the.
Motion made to approve the minutes from November 4th. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, minutes are approved. So next we'll move to announcements. Does any staff have announcements?
We do not have any announcements tonight.
Okay. All right, so what I want to do, I appreciate the silence with a room full of individuals. Sometimes it's difficult to hear others speak as well, so I appreciate your attention there. What I do want to mention is we have speaker cards. If you have not filled out a speaker card and want to speak at tonight's meeting, please make sure you get that card to city staff now. We're looking at I guess the times on speaking. We want to be appropriate. We want to equalize kind of the fors and against, and we want to give you enough time. So we're looking at how we need to allocate that. So if you haven't provided a public comment card and you want to speak, go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to pause for a couple seconds. Raise your hand if you're going to fill out a speaker card and give that to us. Okay. So I will note on item 4, I would have to recuse myself from that item. I live in the neighborhood adjacent across the street, which would cause, you'll notice tonight we have 3 members in presence. We have to have 3 members voting to have a quorum. So we'll take item 4 in that order, but just wanted to let you know that we won't have a quorum for that item. I believe the applicant knows that as well, but wanted to go ahead and announce that. Also, as far as the, order of public comment, so I know we have a lot of residents and, maybe presenters in presence. As far as the order goes, I have basically, we're going to allocate based on for and against, so I want to make sure everybody has, and the goal here is equal time is what we're going for. Typically, under the bylaws, the applicant would be included in the for. What we're going to do, I know we have a presentation. We've told the applicant that he will have 10 minutes to make that presentation. We didn't want to pull time away from the four applicants. So past that, what I'm going to do now is just take a second to count the ones that we have against. So I've got 1, 2. So I've got 6 speaker cards against and 2 for. So we'll say really 2 minutes per person, and that would be 12 minutes per side. So when we get to item 3, staff will start a timer for those 2 minutes. About 30 seconds out, she's just going to raise her hand just so you'll kind of have a heads up of where you are time-wise. So please respect the time rules. We're trying to make sure everybody gets a chance to participate, whether for or against. We welcome your comments. We're glad you're here to participate in the public process. I believe that covers the administrative part. Wanted to at least give you a heads up on the front end so you're not caught off guard when we get to item 3. Is there anything else I missed there, staff, on announcements? Okay, so we've covered the item 4, item 3. I've got the speaker cards here. So next, if staff has no other announcements, we will move to item 1. All right, so item 1 is an appeal of an administrative decision regarding an interpretation of the floodway fringe overlay district boundaries based on a FEMA letter of map revision based on fill for the property located at, it's map 62, parcel 22.22 in Franklin, Tennessee 37064. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you said, item number 1 is an appeal of administrative decision for the city's FFO boundaries for lot number 305 in section 3 of the McEwen Place PUD. The applicant has provided a letter of map revision based on fill issued by FEMA and is requesting that the board interpret the FFO boundary based on the FEMA-approved floodplain boundary change shown and included in the letter. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. So next we'll move to the applicant.
Mr. Chair, my name is Ken Shreve with TWM here on behalf of the applicant. I'm the land surveyor that prepared the LOMAR, and I'm just here to answer any questions. Don't have anything further to add other than staff comments, unless you have questions.
Great. Thank you. So we'll move on and we'll open the public hearing. Are there any citizen comments for? All right, seeing none, are there any citizen comments against? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. So the first was by Joel. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the public comment's closed. Is there a motion on this item?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion made by Joel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, item 1 is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is the applicant present for item number 2? Okay, he is. Okay, perfect. So item number 2, it is a variance request for development within the landscape buffer at the property located at 2013 Oakleaf Circle. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just as a correction, it is Orange Leaf Circle.
Okay.
Yes. Item number 2 is a variance request to develop within the landscape buffer to build a pool and a deck at 2013 Orange Leaf Circle, which is in the October Park subdivision. The lot has a 37.5-foot incompatible lot size buffer located in the rear yard. The applicant currently has an approved pool permit dated October 6, 2021. However, the pool permit is for a smaller pool that sits closer to the rear facade of the house in order to not encroach upon the landscape buffer. Pools are typically allowed in the proposed location within rear yards per the use regulations in the zoning ordinance. The applicant is seeking to place the pool as well as portions of the decking within that 37.5-foot landscape buffer in an area that does not have any planted landscape material based on the final plans for the development. Staff has reviewed this request for the 3 criteria as established by state law. Criteria 1 requires uniqueness in shape or topography of the lot in question, which prevents the zoning ordinance to be followed as written. The parcel is located on the front edge of a cul-de-sac, and it has a platted 37.5-foot incompatible lot size buffer along the rear of the property as required under a previous ordinance. The lot is neither exceptionally narrow nor shallow at approximately 113 feet by 140 feet. Additionally, there are no significant topographic conditions present on the subject parcel. Therefore, staff believes that this criteria is not met. In regards to criteria 2, which states that the strict application of any provision enacted under this ordinance would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to or exceptional hardship upon the owner of the property. The applicant has stated that the proposed location of the pool is ideal for both the family and the lot itself. The approved pool location on the pool permit dated October 2021 is 5 feet from the back of the house. The location of the newly proposed pool is 7 feet from the back of the house, which provides 2 additional feet between the exterior wall and the pool itself, which the applicant has suggested will provide greater safety for the family. The approved pool is both smaller and closer to the back of the house, but it does not encroach into the landscape buffer. City staff found the approved pool to be safe based on applicable codes and issued a permit dated October 6, 2021. While the applicant has suggested that safety issues create an undue hardship, the approved pool does meet safety standards. Therefore, staff believes that this criteria is not met. The final criteria requires that relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or without impairing the purpose of the zoning ordinance. The intent of the buffer is to provide landscaping on smaller lots to screen them from larger adjacent residential lots that existed prior to the development. As proposed, the pool and the pool patio will not remove any landscaping from the buffer. The 37.5-foot buffer is shown on the property map, but landscaping is shown behind the pool's proposed location. Because the zoning ordinance does allow for pools in rear yards as proposed, if not for the landscape buffer, and the applicant would not remove any landscape screening from the buffer to construct the pool and deck, relief may be granted without impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Therefore, staff believes that this criteria is met. Staff would also like to note that the BZA did approve a variance request to develop in the landscape buffer at 2019 Orange Leaf Circle at its November 2021 meeting. The request met all 3 criteria to grant a variance based primarily on topographical conditions on the lot. But based on this analysis, staff recommends denial of the variance request, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present? If you could step forward and state your name for us and your address as well, just for the record.
Hey, I'm Jake Jacobs with Pool and Spa Depot,
Okay.
here on behalf of Mr. Farragalla, who's the owner of the house. Yeah. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. So,
Yeah, if you have anything to add, kind of beyond what staff
yeah, sure.
commented on.
Yeah, so I guess my question in regards to the first criteria, what determines exceptionally narrow?
That really is based on each individual lot.
So there's no standard by which somebody would deduce exceptionally narrow. It's subjective based on whoever's looking at it.
I would default to Emily to answer this question, please.
Generally, how we apply exceptionally narrow in a residential subdivision is by looking at the context of the lot within the greater neighborhood and comparing it along with the rest of the lots that are adjacent to it or in proximity to it. That's normally how the staff analysis is conducted. Again, the Board of Zoning Appeals members may have a different interpretation, but that is how staff analysis is typically conducted.
Yeah, I will mention, I guess this is your opportunity, so, we as a board, we're looking at the 3 criteria outlined, and you'll notice that with these items. So this is really your opportunity to explain to us how, as an applicant, you feel that it meets those criteria.
I got you. Yeah, so I was curious about that because I think if you take a 37.5-foot easement off a rear property line, that would make it exceptionally narrow. Again, in I do a lot of projects yearly, and a 37.5-foot setback from a rear line is exceptional. Like, it's usually at most 10, 20. And so I would deduce that leaves you only about 20 workable feet, 20 something. So again, we feel that that is exceptionally narrow, given that almost 40 foot of his property is unusable for construction.
Okay.
To the second point, it is, so by code, it's 5 foot off the house. So we made a smaller pool work. It does force that pool closer into where his step downs currently happen. So from a safety point, the reason we brought that up is it pushes it in close. So as soon as you exit without pushing that pool back a couple feet, he's got 3 small children, and his fear was, hey, if we're really close there, you come off the bottom step, you're pretty much right there on the water.
So it's
So-
only moved 2 more feet? Just to be clear?
Yeah, 2 feet off the
From
house.
your original proposal?
Correct, yes, sir. Yeah, it's a net gain of 7 feet, which would be 7 foot into that. So that's how we feel that the second criteria is met, and obviously they recommended that the third was already met, and that the functionality of that easement is to be able to plant trees to prevent adjacent neighborhoods acting as a screen, and it can absolutely suffice in that situation.
Okay. All right, thank you for your comments. Any additional comments? Okay.
There's one, I don't know how this works. So I've reviewed the drawings for the variance that was approved for the lot next door. I know that they say that met criteria number 2, that it was exceptionally narrow. On both sides of that house are equal amounts of usable space to design a pool. So again, I scaled those up, saw that, hey, they could have easily slid this one to the side and did what we're doing with a smaller pool. So I guess that was also a concern of how would that one get approved if that pool could have just been shifted and made smaller? What would have made that okay, but not this situation?
I can defer to staff on that. I can tell you from a board standpoint, I'll just answer that quickly. You know, each lot is unique, each situation's unique, topography, whatever the conditions are kind of within that criteria. It could be different within a subdivision. So we do look at these all kind of individually. So hopefully that answers your question.
Sure.
All right, so if there's nothing further, we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anybody present who's for the item? All right, so seeing none, is there anyone here that's against the item that would wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Is that motion made by Joel?
Yep.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Frank. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the public comment portion of the meeting is closed, for this item anyway. Any questions from the board, members at all of staff?
No questions.
Okay. If not, I'm ready to entertain a motion for this item.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance request based on the fact that I think it meets the conditions that cause it to be a hardship.
So motion made for approval. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
So no one is opposed, so this item is approved. So variance is approved.
Thank you all.
All right, so next we're going to move to item 3. It's going to be a variance request, and this is actually changed, so I'll mention this. There were 2 variance requests originally. I'll read the full caption, I guess, for the record. The first variance request was withdrawn by the applicant, so we still have the second one. So when I read the caption, just understand it's the second one that we're reviewing tonight. So it's item number 3, variance request for parking within the landscape frontage of a portion known as the Haynes Berry House at 303 Berry Circle of the property located at 423 South Margin Street. And, again, this is the one we're looking at tonight. Variance request for a new building to face the gardens rather than a public street, private street, or internal drive for the property located at 423 South Margin Street. And staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant for item number 3 has formally requested to withdraw their variance request for parking within the landscape frontage for a portion known as the Hanesberry House of the property located at 423 South Margin Street. As the applicant is going through other commissions and review bodies, the plan changed, which removed the parking lot from in front of the Hanesberry House. Therefore, staff is just going to go directly into comments on the second variance request. The variance request is for a new building to face internal to the gardens rather than a public or private street or internal drive at 423 South Margin Street. The property, commonly referred to as Franklin Grove, once housed the O'Moore campus. The property includes 2 historic houses, the Winstead House and the Hanesberry House, as well as other existing buildings. As part of a larger project, the applicant is proposing to locate a new building towards the rear of the property that would face the gardens, not a street or internal drive. This variance request is only looking at the orientation of the new building. The request has no bearing on use, on size, location, architectural style, zoning classification, etc., of any new building on the site or the development as a whole. Again, this variance request is for relief from Franklin Zoning Ordinance 7.1.3, which states that every lot shall have a frontage on a public street, private street, or internal drive. The proposed use of any new building is not being considered in this request, only the orientation of a new building. Staff has reviewed this request for the 3 criteria as established by state law. Criteria 1 requires uniqueness in the shape or topography of the lot or an exceptional situation or condition of the subject parcel. The parcel is located on the former O'Moore campus. The campus-like setting of the parcel includes 2 historic buildings as well as other existing buildings. In order to face a street, any new or relocated building would need to be located in front of the existing buildings, which would not be ideal or align with the Franklin Historic District design guidelines. By placing a new building internal to the site, the applicant is having the front facade of the new building face a formal open space known as the gardens. Because of the campus-like setting and the shape and size of the site being inconducive to extending a new street or drive to the rear of the site, staff believes the subject parcel represents an exceptional situation and that this criteria is met. Criteria 2 requires an undue hardship or exceptional practical difficulty if the zoning ordinance is strictly applied. The zoning ordinance does require lots to front a street or an internal drive. Any new building on the subject parcel would not be able to face a street unless it was located in front of the 2 historic buildings on the site. The strict application of the zoning ordinance would restrict where new buildings could be located on the site, which is a practical difficulty. A new building facing the gardens, which are a formal open space internal to the property, follows the campus-like setting of the existing site. Therefore, staff believes that this criteria is met. Criteria 3 requires that relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or without impairing the purpose of the zoning ordinance. The exceptional situation on the subject parcel creates a campus-like setting. There are historic buildings on the site which face the streets and meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. In order to not place a new building in front of the historic buildings on the site, a new building should be oriented towards the other existing buildings on the site, which faces which places the front facade of any new building internal to the site. Additionally, it would be difficult to create new internal streets within the subject parcel due to its size. Because the new building will face a formal open space and be placed behind the existing buildings internal to the site, relief can be granted without detriment to the public good or impairing the intent of the zoning ordinance, and staff believes that this criteria is met. Based on this analysis, staff recommends approval of the variance request for a new building to face the gardens rather than a public street, a private street, or an internal drive, because the 3 criteria for granting a variance have been met. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. So next, we'll move to the applicant. If the applicant's present, if you would like to step forward for us and present.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and to present this project. I'm Cyril Stewart. I'm the architect for the project along with BSA Architects. And I live at 3813 Whitland Avenue, Nashville, Tennessee, 37205. It's a highly visible site, and this project's highly visible, as you probably know, and a lot of people are keeping their eyes on this project, which is proper for Franklin and for the way things happen here. The reuse of the old O'Moore campus is an opportunity to create gardens, to renovate 2 magnificent historic structures, to create an art museum, an innovation center that's already opened and already providing a benefit to the community, to relocate the historic Lee Buckner Schoolhouse to this site, and a space for people to gather to create their own memories going into the future. There are stories that are amazing that have come from the research that the Heritage Foundation has done on this site that need to be told, and that's what the purpose of this project is to create that bit of history going forward for generations to come. Well, you've probably heard about this project and its journey through the city's review processes. We've continued to refine the plans. We've made adjustments all along to bring this site into conformance with the many regulations that the city has. It hasn't been easy, especially since the site is so unique in its configuration, its history, and its circumstances. It simply just doesn't fit easily into the boxes that our ordinances were designed for. It's not a typical new building, renovation, or infill project. It's totally unique. This meeting is one of many meetings that we have with the public and with the city to discuss this project. We appeared before the Historic Zoning Commission on February 14th, and with the Planning Commission and with BOMA in the future, who will determine the outcome of this project. But tonight's meeting has one purpose, and that's to review and decide on the specific requirement of the zoning ordinance requiring new buildings to face a street frontage. Whether the hall can face into the site rather than a public road is the question tonight. We agree with the findings of the staff that the project as proposed meets the 3 criteria that are stipulated by the state. The shape of this site, as you can see on the screens, on the left-hand side is Margin Street. On the lower left-hand side is Lewisburg Avenue, and there's a little bit of Berry Circle. That is the entire frontage of the site. The rest of it backs up to property lines of other properties. And so although we have a lot of frontage, because of the historic regulations, new buildings cannot be placed in front of those historic buildings and shouldn't be placed in front of the historic buildings. To put this new structure on the back of the site is the totally appropriate place, the right place to put it, to respect those historic structures and to respect the setting that this is involved in. The strict application of this provision of the ordinance would result in severe difficulties and a hardship by prohibiting any new buildings on the site. Our plan restores the historic homes, including removing some additions that were later additions to the original structure. And even with the new building, it reduces what was 27,000 square feet that was on this site during the time of the O'Moore campus to a total of 18,278 feet. So even with the new buildings, it's much, much smaller than what was there before. the combined footprint, not including the upper stories, for all the existing and proposed buildings is 12,529 square feet. On a 5-acre site, that's extremely low density. Over 3.5 acres of this site will be gardens, which will be a great benefit to the community. And number 3, the proposed orientation focuses and contains both the smokehouse and the hall in a walled garden with a 7-foot-high brick walls and a drive and landscape buffer between us and the adjacent neighborhoods. That screening is going to be much more robust than what's there today, which has existed for 40 years. It, rather than harming the public good, it enhances the beauty and the quality of this area. This site has been a campus for 40 years now, and we ask that you treat it so in your decision tonight. For these reasons, we request the approval of this variance request, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. So next, we will open the public comment. As I mentioned, so I've got the speaker cards up here. The most fair way I can think to do it, I've sorted these by last name. But we're going to swap it up. So the end of the alphabet usually gets the short end of the stick. So we're going to start with the end of the alphabet and work backwards. So starting on the fourth side, if Mrs. Jennifer Parker would like to step forward. And if you could state your name and address for the record.
Hi. Thank you all for your service. My name is Jennifer Parker. I live at 1210 Echo Lane in Franklin, Tennessee. My husband, Jamie Parker, and I have been residents of Franklin for 25 years. We love this community. We have a 14-year-old daughter, and we love Franklin. I serve on the Heritage Foundation Board. I've been a board member for 5 years. I serve on the executive committee, and I also chair the Franklin Theater Advisory Board. We're here today to ask for a very special variance for the exceptional nature of this campus and what Franklin Grove can be. And what is proposed for Franklin Grove is exceptional on a community level, a regional level, and a national level for what we would like to do. We're hopeful to move forward with a vision for Franklin Grove and one that would preserve its legacy and interpret the history of this property for generations and generations to come. The campus has a tradition of supporting a tremendous amount of nonprofit events throughout its history. I attended many of them, fashion shows and seersucker and on. Amazing gatherings with wonderful memories on this property. In its modern history, the campus was known with Miss O'Moore as the advancement of creative and arts and history, and we want to preserve that legacy. This exceptional history has a chance to live through Franklin Grove. It would be heartbreaking to drive by this property and see what happened to Maryland Farms, which could have been a Harlansdale. We love Harlansdale. It was at great risk of being developed for-profit entities. It is amazing to drive by that property and see that. It would be heartbreaking to drive by Franklin Grove and see it as a for-profit entity, which it's at great risk of if we are unable to complete the project. We would seek this variance today so we can help share stories and tell history and preserve this gem for our community. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. So next is Mr. David Garrett, present.
Hello, I'm David Garrett. I live at 4329 Columbia Pike, Franklin, Tennessee. I also serve as the chairman of the board of the Heritage Foundation. You know, the variance we seek applies to this proposed hall, so it would be interfacing. And, you know, one of the reasons is, as you can see, it makes sure that the predominant things you see when you look at the campus are the two historic structures. And this placement also, as Cyril mentioned, looks into a walled garden. So it helps with access and also keeping any sound and activities within the site, which is important to us. And, you know, a shared use structure, people ask, why are we putting this structure on there? A shared use structure is best practices in historic preservation. It's been endorsed by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And frankly, like the Franklin Theater, any project has to be financially solvent and have a good financial plan. Like the theater, we didn't reopen it just to have movies. We have live music, we have meetings, we have movies, still other activities. And it has sources of revenue from its concession and its bar. Same thing with this property. You have to have this structure not only for us to have a gathering place for community education, because the mansion itself has small rooms, but you also have to have a revenue stream that helps underwrite the overall program and also helps underwrite keeping low admission prices for school children and the general public. As the board chair and as a board member, it's our responsibility to make sure a project is long-term financially stable. You have to look beyond just building it. You know, we have to have a diversified revenue, as I said, of admissions, sponsors, donors, and some events. If you sacrifice any one of these areas, the project isn't going to be able to be functional. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional speaker cards on the for side that we didn't either collect? We're trying to create equal time here, so if there's anybody who wishes to speak on behalf. Okay. So now moving to the against side, we'll follow the same concept. I'll just double check that I've got these in the right alphabetical order. All right, so starting with Ms. Lillian Stewart.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Franklin Board of Zoning Appeals. My name is Lillian Stewart. My husband, Boardman Stewart, and I live at 201 Lewisburg Avenue here in Franklin. And may I say at the outset, you had a comment about discussion of use. I think that is I know it is a concern for myself, and I believe that David, Mr. Garrett, really in his comments talked an awful lot about use. So with your permission, I'd like to read my prepared remarks.
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm here to ask that you disapprove variance request number 2 that is being presented by the Heritage Foundation for the Franklin Grove Estate property. The construction of a large event center would create a substantial detriment to the public good at this site. As a resident at the junction of Lewisburg Avenue and East Folk Street and the owner of historic property at 501 South Margin Street, I can fully attest to the heavy traffic and congestions that daily impact these residential routes. The variance would allow vehicles approaching large events to congregate and depart at the same time, presenting a considerable danger. A significant danger would consist for motorists who must slow to enter the site off Lewisburg Avenue, and also be dangerous for regular commuters who must converge from north and south and east and west at the nearby intersection. All of this additional traffic and stacking is sure to create undue congestion in downtown Franklin. Whereas staff has recommended approval of the new building due to its proposed relocation within the site, its off-site impact would remain detrimental to the community at large. The civic institution zoning designation of the Franklin Grove property generally seems good. However, the Franklin Grove site cannot provide safe ingress and egress for the event venue building, nor does not seem to satisfy criteria for the public good or for the intent and purpose of the CI zoning ordinance. I believe that by denying the approval of this event structure, the intent and purpose of the CI zoning ordinance will be further validated and upheld. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, Mr. Alan Sims, if you're present and could step forward for us. If you could state your name and address for the record, that would be great.
Sure. I'm Alan Sims, 119 Lewisburg Avenue. So I'm going to talk about use 2 because I live on Lewisburg. We have a wonderful residential neighborhood. I do not want a commercial facility in my residential neighborhood. We've worked hard to develop a community. We have neighborhood parties. It's a very loving, fun, engaged neighborhood. And if you start putting commercial buildings in our neighborhood, you're going to destroy that. And one thing that Franklin prides itself on is quality of life. So I'm asking you to preserve our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we will move to Gail Haddock. If you're present, if you could step forward for us.
Thank you. I'm Gail Haddock. I live at 213 Lewisburg Avenue in Franklin. And I'm also representing my 95-year-old mother who has memory loss, and she owns the property at 201 Fifth Avenue South. And I represent her as a daughter, but I also have her power of attorney, so I can, legally represent her too. I don't know if that's important to you all. But I do want to address the fact that having the hall face the garden makes sense to me. I also realize that, it would be totally inappropriate to put a new structure between the historic properties and Lewisburg or Margin. But I do think that in practical terms, the service aspect for this building, since the front will be facing the garden, will be at the rear of the building, which is maximizing the impact on the adjacent neighbors. The noise that the service vehicles and personnel will undoubtedly, cause. I can see why the Heritage Foundation does not want that at the front of the building. It would be unattractive. Well, it's unattractive for the neighbors to the rear. And to me, this shows sort of the general disregard of of the venue aspect of this project for the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next, Mr. Walter Green.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Walter Green. I live on 4th Avenue South, about a block from Franklin Grove, and I'm speaking on behalf of the concerned neighbors of Franklin Grove. You may know us as much as for anything for our famous yellow signs that have been very effective in making a whole lot of people aware of the issues at Franklin Grove, the event venue, the rezoning, and what have you. In spite of the rumor, there are more than just a handful of people who are concerned about the venue and the rezoning. We have sold 140 no event venue yard signs, and I ordered 20 more today. That's pretty amazing. I think about 300 go out in a typical alderman campaign. And although a petition is of questionable value, we did one, and the results are really kind of interesting. I won't get into the details, but we have more than 1,000 signatures. So my point being that we have broad, significant support, and it's growing all the time. We feel that time is on the side of the neighbors because people are increasingly talking about what's happening at Franklin Grove. And so we're fine with this project progressing slowly. Not that it is, but time is on our side. CNFG opposes anything that supports the venue or rezoning. I have no problem with the 3 criteria, but I have to stand here supporting our people, our neighborhood, and say I really oppose because I can't speak positively for anything that supports the venue. It's an ill-conceived concept. And it's ill-conceived for so many reasons, but when you talk about zoning, it's ill-conceived because the current zoning doesn't allow commercial event venue, and that's an obvious thing. In addition to that, zoning says that event venues shall not draw significant amounts of traffic through residential streets, and this venue certainly would. So we'll deal with that later in the process. To be clear, CNFG is only against the commercial event venue. There's no commercial activity in this neighborhood, and there should not be. We want good neighbors. We do not want a venue here or in any residential part of Franklin. We believe that rezoning would set a disturbing precedent for the city and its residents. If the city were to allow this venue, it could trigger a series of requests from other developers seeking the same terms for their projects. Thank you for listening and for your service to the city.
Thank you. So next, I may mess the last name up on this. Jenny and Steve, is it Farley? I'm having a hard time reading the letters there. What is your last name, sir?
I pronounce it Fahey.
Fahey, okay.
But
Thank you
I've
very
learned-
much.
I've learned to answer to whatever someone says.
Thank you. I apologize for that.
No worries. So I apologize. I did not realize by putting the card in the box that meant I was speaking. I thought it was just there for whatever. But so here I am.
Your vote against.
So I live at 109 Lewisburg. So it's actually at the corner of Lewisburg and Berry Circle. So my next door neighbor is the property that we're discussing. And I'm a history buff. I love architecture. I've lived in Franklin since, I grew up in Nashville, but attended BGA. I've been in Franklin all my life. So I love Heritage Foundation and what it's done. But right now, the event venue, the zoning that you would change tonight puts in motion, or puts some things one step further in motion. I'm against that event venue. So the way I look at this is, and I completely understand, we need a revenue stream. But just because we need a revenue stream, we can't start to change the zoning. So I'm a supply chain guy, and I have an expression that says, and this is going to sound bad, but your lack of planning does not constitute my emergency. So I believe that before this project was undertaken, this should have all been considered and vetted, and it should have only gotten this far if there was broad community support for what was entailed. And I think right now, yes, they need a revenue stream, but I think this is the wrong way to go about it. It's a residential community. Alan said it. This is a commercial endeavor. It needs to go into something that's already commercially zoned. So I would hope that you would agree. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, Mr. Ernie Bacon.
Good evening. My name is Ernie Bacon, and my wife and I reside at 224 4th Avenue South, downstream from the proposed project. I have previously served, as you have served, not on this particular board, but I've been on BOMA, I've been on the Municipal Planning Commission, and I have also been president of the Heritage Foundation. I'm speaking against this variance request for the new building to face the way they propose. The variance request is premature since a proposed building has yet to be approved by the appropriate Franklin public bodies. I'm requesting either a denial or a deferral until such time as this project and the proposed building in particular has specifically been approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we miss anyone? I believe we've captured all the cards. Is there anyone who didn't fill out an against card that would wish to speak? Okay. So seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close the public comment?
Motion made by Joel to close the public comment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by, I almost said Frank, Jeff.
You said
Second by
that.
Jeff. Frank is with us in spirit. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And no one is opposed, so public comment's closed. Are there any questions, I guess, from the board of staff at all? I do want to reiterate, and I guess for the audience as well, this body, so we're definitely not looking at use as the Board of Zoning Appeals. We're looking at 3 objective criteria that we've discussed in the past. So just want to mention that the board, through that, I believe, development plan process, is looking at the use of the property and could be existing current zoning that impacts that as well. So we're not looking at use. Any questions from the board of staff?
I want to make sure, Victoria, we are approving solely the orientation of this new building.
That is correct. The
The building will be further discussed in planning.
Yeah.
only thing that you would be looking at is the orientation and if a new building on this site can face internal rather than a public street, a private street, or an internal drive.
Okay,
Yeah, there's no proposed building yet.
right.
And I would add that this variance request does come in the process during the overall development plan review, which has been submitted to staff. But before it can proceed to the Planning Commission and Board of Mayor and Aldermen, staff needs to know if the variance is going to be approved because it affects our recommendation further in the process because the plan would not be compliant with the zoning ordinance. Now, other criteria are obviously being examined during that staff review as well. We have not concluded our staff review for those bodies yet, but in terms of this consideration, we know that the hall the orientation of the hall does not meet the zoning ordinance. So we know that this variance request is necessary if they want to proceed to the next step.
So correct me if I'm wrong, staff, on this. So we are looking at a specific zoning ordinance requirement that would require basically a new building to face a public street, private street, or internal drive. So if we approve this variance request, we're really looking at, this building could be anywhere on this lot. I know there's like a particular spot that we're looking at on a conceptual plan now, but we're not approving the location of the building. We're just approving the variance to the zoning provision, correct?
That is correct.
That's correct. And as you can see, that the variance request is to front a formal open space. So they would need to actually front that formal open space as part of the variance or, requirements.
So that would be a
But-
stipulation.
Right, but technically, they
They could move it.
potentially could redesign and move that. But as we have said, the zoning ordinance requires that the building be oriented towards a public street or the internal drive, but our historic district design guidelines would not encourage a building to be placed in front of the historic structures. So if this variance is not granted, there is not really a place that our overall regulations would allow any new building to be placed.
Otherwise.
So is staff recommending approval with the condition that it front the open space? Is that,
The way that the caption is written for this variance request, it is a condition, the condition is written into the variance request. It has to face the
The
garden.
garden.
gotcha. Okay, thank you. I'm ready to entertain a motion if a board member's ready.
Ready? I'd like to make a motion to approve the orientation of this building to be facing inward based on the fact that staff recommends that it qualifies for a hardship and meets the criteria necessary within the zoning ordinance to comply.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second? So motion made by Joel. Is there a second?
I second.
Second made by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, the variance request is approved. Thanks, everyone, for kind of working through the public comment process. We appreciate your patience and consideration.
We have not adjourned yet, so we need to be able to hear the rest of the meeting as you all are leaving. Thank you.
Yep, so item number 4, that is the item where we do not have a quorum. I guess at this point, so I'm recusing myself from item 4. I don't need to participate in the deferral either, correct? I should? Okay. Okay, so item number 4, it is for one additional drive aisle and 2 rows of parking bays for the property located at 1850 General George Patton Drive. Is there a motion?
What's the motion we're going to be looking for?
It's, so we can't vote on the item, so we need a motion for deferral.
Is that-
Till,
okay, yeah.
to the next meeting, it'll be, so we need to do it to a date certain, which would be March 3rd.
That makes sense.
All righty, so item 4, is there a motion?
Motion to defer item 4 because we don't have a quorum.
Okay, motion made, is there a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, is there a motion for, we'll leave adjournment, we are down to the end here, so is there a motion for adjournment?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to intrude. Normally on a motion to defer, you name the date certain. You
Oh, yeah.
defer to the date certain.
Yep, so we talked
the-
about that, so let's go back then, so.
Sorry about that.
It would be, no problem, we're kind of in a, in picture-taking mode here, so, the date certain would be March 3rd, is there, let's go back and redo the motion, so the next
Okay.
meeting will be March 3rd.
Yeah, so I'll read you the motion. I'd like to make a motion to defer this item to the March 3rd Board of Zoning Appeals meeting,
Okay, so motion
which
made
is
to.
next month.
To defer this item to the March 3rd Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, is there a second?
I second.
Second made by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
So no one is opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Thanks, staff, as well.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thought we were already there. All right, so now, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Jeff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joel. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, everyone have a great night.